Hi everyone. In today's exercise, we will be using the Cadwork 2D application. So you see here on the screen a few of these exercises we will be doing. So as I mentioned before, to start a new project, well, make sure you're in a new folder and click on New Cadwork 2D, and let's use the imperial, the inch init file to start with. I'll just call it exercises and press enter. So now it's launching an empty Cadwork 2D file. So before we start with the exercises, by the way, it is in the PDF. So that's the part 4 that you need to look at. And before we start with these exercises, I'd like to look at like the user interface. So you see it's pretty similar to the 3D application. There are obviously a few differences, and I'd like to look at these differences. So first, you see on the display we have a few frames already available with different formats. So if you look in closely, you have a letter, so 8.5 by 11. You have a couple of them. You have an 11 by 17, and then you have a summary of the graphics settings that we will be looking at shortly. And we have some text and some titles that are already available. So the text here are in different layers. So in Cadwork 2D, uh, we are using layers, and this is really important to understand how these layers work. Um, so we see here we have layers at different scales. So you have to represent or to understand or see these layers pretty much as transparent paper. So you have a stack of transparent paper, and currently on the top of the pages, on the top of the stack, we are currently working in layer number 1 at scale 1:1, so real size. Then if I need to, I can select a text here, and it's gonna switch my layer. So here I selected a text that is inside um, layer number 11 at a scale of 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. So it's reducing the size by 48, 1:48. So that's what it means. So we see here, if I click on layer 7 or text here, 7, it's actually activating layer number 7. So in order to create new layers, you can click on layer at the very top, and here you have all your layers. I'm not going to go through all the functionalities in this window, but you see here you can create a new layer, simply type a name and set the scale of the layer, and then you have some further options in here. So here we are going to start in layer standard for the first exercise. But before we start with the first exercise, I also need to explain a little bit um, what is the graphics mode in Cadwork. What are the graphics mode? So if you if you go on the left, you will see that there is a button where it says GR mode, so graphics mode. And if you click on it, you see, by the way, that we do have 16 graphics modes available. Each button has different settings. Um, when adding lines, when adding surfaces, text, dimensions, etc. So currently G1 is selected. You can easily switch from one graphics to another by just left clicking on the button. You also see, like in 3D, you have bubble helps that they pop up as soon as you hover above a function. And again, you see that you can left click, middle click, and right click on these buttons. Um, and by the way, at the bottom end, you also have command lines as in Cadwork 3D. Shortcuts are most of the time the same. So for copy, move, stretching, you see these are similar. So let's look a little bit closer to the at the graphics mode. So if I left click on the graphics mode, it window pops up and we have our 16 different settings. So you can read this horizontally for G1. So we see that when adding a line in G1, it will be a gray line. When adding a surface, it's a gray outline. A surface is always a closed polyline. Text, so the text has got a specific font with a specific, well, color and size. So here, no matter in what layer you're working, the text you will be adding will always be 332nd. And dimensions in the G1 will be gray with a precision of a 16th of an inch, and it will be written in feet, inches, and fractions. Then we have settings for absolute vertical or elevation dimensions, and settings for nodes and auxiliary lines, but these are not as important as the other ones, at least at the beginning. We see that if we look below G2, it's got different settings, so green lines, green surfaces, um, and etc. Also green dimensions, and we also have surfaces with um, hatchings. So in order to change a setting, you can simply click on the three dots. Should you want to change a line, the line settings. So you click on the three dots and here you can change the color, the line type. So if I click on line type, you see you have different formats or different patterns. The thickness, typically we leave the thickness, we do not set a thickness directly in the graphics, but it's only when printing. So we will be looking at that later on. You can also add what we call end types to these lines, so different patterns on the line end, different sizes, and etc. So that's for lines. Then same thing for surfaces. So you click on the three dots, and I would say the something important for surfaces is the ability to add hatchings. So again, I don't want to go too much into details. So let's get started with our first exercise. So let's start with our first exercise. So let's go to our document and we will be building this shape here using a polyline. So I have some missing information, but using auxiliary lines, I will be able to build this shape. So we see here we need a 2-inch horizontal line, and then the next line is, or next segment is 3 inches long, and we know the diagonal here, which is 4 inches. So I can, using a triangle, using actually auxiliary circles, I can find the point here. So let's move to our 2D. we are going to add um, our polyline here in here. So under add lines, so you see you can add different things, lines, surfaces, text, dimensions, nodes, etc. Um, and what we would like to do is, so adding a line, you see the shortcut is L. So I'm going to use the shortcut here. And again, you can find all the shortcuts under help manual. And here we have the shortcut for version 28. You can open, this is a PDF, and you have the 2D um, shortcuts summarized in this document here. So let's go back to our 2D. We want to work in scale in a layer at scale 1 to 1. We see it here. That's the scale. In some other exercises, the layer will be a quarter of an inch equals a foot. So that has to be uh, done before starting to model. Well, we can always move parts or items from one layer to another to change scale. That's not a problem. Here we will be starting with auxiliary lines. So I'm in the right scale. I'm going to add a cross. So I'm going to middle click here on the bottom left corner. This is where I'd like to start with my polyline. And we see here I use the middle mouse button, so it's the cursor location, to add the first to add the cross here. Then I'm going to offset, so I already have an offset of 2 inches towards the left. If it's not 2 inches, you can always change it, like 4, enter, 2, enter. So you enter the value, press enter, and you see the current value down here at the bottom. Then the next step is to add an auxiliary circle. So we have 4 different ways to add auxiliary circles, 4 options. So the center and the radius, 2 passing points. So it could be intersection points or tangent points with the radius, a center point plus the radius, well, the radius that you pick with a point, intersection, tangent as well, and a circle using um, 3 points or 3 tangents or whatever, a combination of different situations, tangent points, corners, etc. So here I'm going to use the center plus the radius, so 4 inches for the first circle, and here 3 inches. So I just want to double check. So if I go back to our first exercise, 4 and 3, the intersection, I have the point here, and then it's 90 degrees towards the vertical line. So I already have enough points in order to achieve, so I don't need to add a line here plus a perpendicular. I could do that, that would work fine. But when building my or adding my line by pressing L, I can start with the first point. So left click on the first intersection, left click on the second one, then here I can left click as well. And you see here on the, the right hand side, you have shortcuts to add, to create your line. So if you need an arc, you can press A. Here I need a 90-degree segment based on my first line. So I press Q, and now I can, you see, go right, but here I'm going to go left and then left click here. So I have my first um, polyline added, and now we can move to the next step. So the next step is to use an auxiliary line to divide our segment in five equidistant portions, and then add a parallel line to our diagonal here. So let's go back to the 2D. So first, I'm gonna add my diagonal. So by using this auxiliary line, I left click here and left click here. So I have the parallel, I have the line, and then the next one should be parallel. We will be dividing our segment. So I need to divide the segment from here to there. I need 5 equidistant. So you see the length of the line is 2.84 inches. I press 5, enter, and here it's telling me the result. So it gives you the result. You could basically change the value. So here I press 6, and then it gives you the result of the division. So here we said it's 5, enter. If you're happy with 5, then you press enter again and it creates points. So these red dots that I can use. And then I can make a parallel. So a parallel line is this button here. I can pick the one and click the point I'd like to use. And now I can add a line. So I press L and click on the intersection here and the intersection here. Then what is the next step? The next step is to create a circle and find, so obviously we could add a dimension line here to find, and this is what we will be doing. We will be adding a few dimension lines for the missing uh, dimensions or distances. So I can go here and add a circle. I'm going to add an auxiliary circle. So here, using tangents. So here, tangent here, here, and here. So now we can add a circle. I have the center, I have a passing point, so I can press L again. And then you see at the bottom, you can add different lines. So I can add a circle, I can add an arc and a rectangle. So, and other things. So I press C here, and then I need the center and a passing point. There we go. Now that we have added um, these items, we are going to add some dimension lines. So here I could delete my auxiliary lines. I do not need them anymore. And let's add some dimensions. So we see here we have horizontal dimensions series, so it means you can select several points, vertical and parallel. So let's start with the horizontal. So I select horizontal. You see the shortcuts. It's H, V for vertical, and P for parallel. So horizontal, you simply click points that you need to dimension. As soon as you are happy with the points you would like to dimension, you see that you can left click and delete a point. If there is a point that you would like to remove, you simply middle click, and once you're happy, you right click, and then you see you have some snap points that are a quarter of an inch apart from each other. So you can use these dots to fix the dimension line, or you could simply middle click to fix it on the current location. So here I'm going to use this, and now we see we have 2 inches segment, which is fine. Then we need a vertical dimension, so V. I left click left click, right click, left click on the dot, and for the parallel, I'm gonna press P and pick the 2 points here and left click there. Then I need also a dimension line for this segment, so I press P. I can also click directly, left click on the segment, and it will dimension the selected segment. So that's pretty straightforward. And then for the radius, I can go add dimensions, and here we have a dimension for the radius. You simply left click on the circle and it will be adding the radius of your circle. Let's move to the next step. So the next step is to add a perpendicular line here. So we need to build to find actually to add the um, to find this bisector and then add a perpendicular line through uh, this here. So the bisector is actually to find the center of that circle, and then we will need to add a an arc here, an arc of a circle. So let's start with the bisector. So we have here a function to find a bisector. I can click on the two segments and now I have the bisector. Here I need a line that is perpendicular to this line here. So I can press L and start with a line here. And here we have, so we saw we have a uh, like you can do another segment that is 90 degrees from the first segment. Here it's a perpendicular to an existing segment. So I need this line that I'm modeling to be perpendicular to this line. So you press L and then you see it creates a point right away. There we go. Now to find the center, I need to extend this segment using an auxiliary line. So here there is a function, there is also a shortcut, it's S, to add a segment, and now I have my circle. So I could, just by adding an auxiliary circle, I can click on the center and the end, the corner of my uh, shape, and then I have enough information to be able to add the the arc of a circle. So here I have different options to create that arc of a circle. So which starts here or down here. So it's a line. I press L and then I left click on the intersection. Now I would like to follow this auxiliary line. So the shortcut is C to follow an auxiliary circle. So you could have like multiple circles, and then each time you want to follow a circle, you have to point the cursor on the circle and press C. And now you see as soon as you press C, it's following the line, and I can left click to fix it. There we go. So now we have the two extra lines, we have E and we have D. Now we need to add a dimension line to know the length of that segment. So go back here and then I can select the segment and go to add dimensions, and it's an arc series. Then I can simply click on the 2 points and then I can move the cursor, and I could here middle click to set this. Okay, here I see that, well, this is my frame, so when printing, it won't be that nice. So what I can do, I could delete all these auxiliary lines, and I can select the whole drawing, and I can move it by pressing 5. I want to move it in X. I'm fine vertically, and I can middle click once I have the right location. So really easy to do. So I think we are done with this exercise. Then the next exercise is just to make a polyline with these values. So pretty simple, 1.5 inches. So I don't even need auxiliary lines to achieve this. I can just go there, press L to add a line. I'm gonna middle click. I want to start here. I want to go in X 1.5. Then I want to go up in Y. So you see again, you have shortcuts down here. 1 inch. In X, an extra 1 inch. So positive. I could go in the negative direction as well. And then I need to go 2 inches up. So vertically in Y, 2, and then X. So back in X, I don't need to do the math. I can simply click on the first point because it's going into the X direction. My point that I'm going to click here, left click, will be projected along the X, and then I can close the line here. And now we have a polyline. This polyline could be modified into a surface, so I could click modify. I can modify a line into a surface, and there you go. You see that that surface has a hatching, so it's because I used G5. Now you can always change it. If you'd like to set it to G4, you can select items and then middle click. You see that middle clicking modified the selected items with the current the graphics settings. So if I middle click on G4, now I just changed the settings to G4. Great. So let's move forward. Now we need to model another shape, and that has to be done at uh, a 1/4 inch in a 1/4 inch layer. So let's go back in our 2D, and then so I have different ways of switching layers. I can click on layer, and I can double click on the layer I'd like to work in, so a 1/4 inch, or I could also simply click on the text here. I know that these texts are in the proper layer, so I want to work at a 1/4 inch. I can click on the text here, and I can start there. So again, I'm going to start with an auxiliary line. I like to start with a cross. So let's just look here. We are going to start with this one. So we've got um, here a vertical, and then it's 4 inches for that point with like 6 and 6. So that's enough for me to be able to go all the way up here. Then we need 90 degrees, 8 inches. So that allows us to go all the way here. And then you see we need 2 auxiliary circles in order to find this intersection. So 8 inches, or sorry, 8 feet and 14 feet. So these are feet because I'll be working in at a quarter of an inch. Um, so let's get started with this here. So I'm gonna start here. So I added like a cross, and then so I said 8, and then perpendicular. So offset 8 feet. So remember to press the foot mark, and then I'm gonna go 8 feet here. Then I should be actually able to do this without auxiliary lines. So let me show you how. So I press L. We're gonna add a surface in G4. So let's just switch back to G5. I'm gonna create blue lines. L. So here that's already, I could have done like Y and then 8 feet. Then from here to there, it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be 6 feet. So here, and then in X minus 6. And the next one is actually, I can go in 6 feet in X and 4 feet up. So there is a function for that. It's the D function. So dx dy relative. So D. So in X it's minus 6 feet, and in Y it's 4 feet. And now I can click on the point and it's adding this. Now I need a 90-degree angle. So we already saw that before. It's Q. So I press Q, and the segment length is 8 feet. So I can type 8 feet. There we go. And now I'm kind of stuck. I need to use my auxiliary lines, so 8 and 14 feet. So let's go back and go back to auxiliary lines. So radius. So again, it's 8 feet. Enter. And here it's 14 feet. I have the intersection. I can press L and continue my line here. There we go. So let's go back. This is matching what I was looking for. So now let's go to the next one. So we see we are mixing radiuses. Here in this case, well, different radiuses. So it's actually like 90 degrees. So I'm starting here. I see it's tangent here, and we've got a 10 feet radius, and here we have a 4 feet straight line. So I'm gonna delete all my auxiliary line. I can move this out of the way, so I could eventually go to cut solder, and I could solder this into one line. So 5, middle click, and let's start with the next exercise. There we go. So we start again. I start with a cross, and then I can go 8 feet vertically, and then with a radius of 6 feet. So let's start. So L, so vertically 8 feet, and then I need an arc, so A. Then it's a tangent radius, so T. The radius of the circle is 6 feet. Then I'd like to go, so I need to indicate on what side I would like to create this radius. So I left click, and then I can the next exercise is to achieve this shape, and we will be able to achieve this without using any auxiliary lines. So I'm gonna start at the bottom right corner. So we need 8 inches, 8 feet vertically, and then we need a quarter of a circle, like with 6 feet radius, then a straight that is 4 feet. So we know here the angle, because it's a quarter of a circle, it's 90 degrees. Then horizontally 4 feet, and then again a quarter of a radius um, with 10 feet radius. So, and whatever it's going to create the length we have here. So let's get started. I'm gonna start by pressing L. I don't need an auxiliary line. I can press L to add a line. Then I need to go vertically 8 feet. And then I need to do an arc, so A. And it's a tangent, so tangent to the first segment. So I press T and the enter the radius, which is 6 feet. And then I have two options. So I'm going to click up here. That's where I'd like to go. And you see some options appearing. I can either set the length of the segment or the angle. So here in this case, I know the angle R 90, enter. Then I need to go in the X direction, so towards the left, so minus 4 feet. And we can continue with another arc of a circle, so A, and then another tangent, so T, with a radius of 10 feet. And then again, I click on the segment here, and again, I know the angle R 90 degrees. Then the remaining vertical line, so I press Y, click on my first point, left click, and left click here. There we go. I can now delete my auxiliary lines, and we have our shape. So here I could eventually add some vertical dimensions. So from here to there, I'd like to have the radius. So add dimension, radius here, here, and eventually some horizontal line maybe between these, and H between these. There we go. We can now move to the next um, exercise. The next exercise is actually what I describe as a ping pong game, because we will be bringing data from Cadwork 3D into 2D. So we will be bringing our blockhouse, so the second exercise we worked on, and we are going to focus on these items. So you lasso the the house and you press forward slash to hide the grid lines. So this is what we would like to bring. So before we bring this into our 2D, um, I suggest you go to Preferences and Project Data, and you fill in um, the general data. So project name, project number, architect, customer, designer, etc., the address, in order to bring this into the title block later on. So once it's done, you can close. So again, that's under Preferences in 3D, Project Data. You fill whatever you feel like filling, and then you press Control S in order to save your model and save the data there. Then you switch back to Cadwork 2D, and we will be adding our different views in the third um, frame that we do have here. Um, so let's look a little bit at the layout, and you see we shouldn't forget about the scale. We want to fit this information, and to do this, we will do 1 inch equals a foot. So, and we will be bringing these views from Cadwork 3D into the 2D. And how do we achieve this? So on the previous page, it's actually explaining that the first step is to choose the view in Cadwork 3D. And then once you have the view selected, well, you don't have to activate the parts, but what you see displayed is what you would like to get in 2D. Then you press comma on the keyboard, and it will be creating what we call a clipboard. So it's a temporary file that we will be using to bring the data from 3D to 2D. To go from 3D to 2D or 2D to 3D, it's the same way. You press comma. So let's get started. So I go to my 3D. I select a view. Let's do the Y view. And here I press comma. So as soon as you press comma, you see it's asking for a clipboard number, and the default number is 1. So typically we never um, change the number. We always overwrite number 1, and you don't have to press 1. You just right click and it will be writing clipboard number 1. Then you switch to Cadwork 2D, and before you paste, we said we want to make sure we want to fit that in here at scale 1 inch equals a foot. So you select the layer, and then you press 3 to paste the clipboard. So here, as soon as you press 3, it's asking you for the clipboard number. So again, I right click, and then I see my view appearing, and I want that view at the bottom, at the top left corner. So you middle click once you have the right view. Perfect. Then I go back and I'd like to see the side view. So change the view by clicking here on the right, on the left. So an X view, Y view, Z view, and axonometric view. So we will be bringing these views um, one after another. There are features in Cadwork to automate and generate these views automatically um, using the export solid. This is something we will be looking at later on, but first we need to know how to walk first before we run. And here I'm gonna press comma again, and back to 2D, I press 3, and I'm gonna paste this in here using the middle mouse button. Then another one, we would like to bring the axonometric, so comma, and back to 2D, 3, and paste the axonometric. Then next one is a top view. So I'm gonna hide, let's hide the roof and all the blocks at the top. Then I do a Z view and I make comma and bring what I'm seeing here 3 to paste and middle click. There we go. So once we have achieved this, we can manipulate and do a few things. So if we look at the exercise on the last page or the one before the last, we see that we want to play a little bit with hatchings, with dimensions. We would like to add some text, and let's start with the, so let's zoom a little bit closer. We would like to add a surface here, which is going to hide what's behind the surface. So we need a 4-inch radius. So I can do it here. So go to the auxiliary line and add the radius 4. There we go. And here I can start adding a surface. So here I'd like to add a surface um, that has no hatchings. So G1 is fine. So I press F. F is the shortcut to add a surface. So F, and then here I pick the first point, the first intersection. Then I press C to follow the circle, left click here. Then I want to continue in Y. Then press X and click on the first point and right click. As soon as you right click, the last point will close the surface and go to the connect with the first point. There we go. So now I can manipulate this surface and I want to hide what's behind it. So I can modify, select the surface, left click on it, and set it to opaque. And now you see it's hiding items that are behind. I can delete the auxiliary line. Now I'd like to add a few lines. So if I go in here, I see there is a cross and a horizontal line here. So you can tweak a little bit your drawings this way. So here I press L, going here and maybe here, and then another line to go here. So now we've already achieved what we see in here. Now we need to add some um, dimension lines. So the first one I'd like to add is this one here for that kind of a block above the roof. So it's a parallel line P, and I'm gonna pick the 2 points, right click, middle click here. That's all good. Then I'd like another parallel line P, left click, left click, left click, right click, and left click here. That's all good. Then I'd like to know the roof slope. So for the slope, it's an angle dimension. So add dimension angle. The shortcut is A. And for roof slopes, there are different options. So as soon as you press A, you see that, well, I could pick 2 points, 2 segments. So it gives me the slope between 2 segments. But then we also have another option where if I press A, I have 2 options. I can press S for the slope with an arrow. So, but you have to point to make sure the cursor is on a line, and then you press S and then middle click. So you see there is an arrow with the slope. Then I can also define or show the pitch. So working in Imperial, the pitch could be 10 10, 9, 8, whatever. So it's always 9, 10, 9, 12, 10, 12, etc. So here it's going to be an odd value, obviously, because 30 degrees, it's not really a standard pitch, but here I can press the dollar sign. So where is dollar? Here. And then I can middle click and we see it's a 6.93 pitch. So always related with 12. Anyway, we can continue now with some more dimensions. So I'd like a horizontal dimension between here and there. Right click, vertical dimension V between and select these points. Right click, middle click here, etc. And here there is a pretty um, neat function. It's to add quickly um, a string uh, just by selecting 2 points. So here I'm going to set it to G5, and then I'm going to press H for horizontal. Then I'm going to pick, and then I'm going to press L for a long line, and then I'm going to pick 2 points. It could be like a polyline as well, it would work. But here I need a string that goes from the bottom left to the bottom right. I right click and then I can place the um, the string. Now let me do it again. I'd like to show you a trick. If I press HL and then I pick the 2 points and then right click, here at the very bottom, you can still edit and add more options. So if I'd like to have an added distance, I can press S and you see there is a bold square on the left, which means this is my 0 point for the added distance. But I can also invert, so have the 0 on the right instead. So if you press W, you see that the bold rectangle is moving, toggling left and right. So I'm happy with having the 0 on the left. I left click and now you see you have an added distance. So that's what we call sum in Cadwork. So I think that's a pretty handy option. There are many other options for dimensions, but we will be looking at those later on. So now the next step is to add some text. So I'd like to add a text here. So I press T to add a text, and then I can middle click where I'd like to add the text. So here I'm going to write elevation, enter, and then I can copy this text. So the text is preset because it's the ones set in G5. I could eventually change it and middle click here, and you see it's changing the size. So it's a 5/32 text here using G13, and then I can copy it 6 in X and eventually in Y. So I have my titles here and I can edit. I can left click on the text, press T, and you see it edits at the bottom. And then here I'm going to type side view and here plan view. So T. You can also edit a text by double clicking on it, and you can edit it right away without the edit button at the very bottom. So that's also a way of doing it. Then I'd like to show you a few more tricks um, when it comes to hatchings. So we would like to add some different hatchings in this drawing. So let's say I'd like a hatching here on the diagonal at the bottom here. So I can check my graphics mode, and I can add, let's say, for instance, the hatching G9. So here, this is, if I left click here, I can select this guy. This is already a surface. So I can select a surface and go modify, hatching type. And here I'd like just a straight hatching. You see that here I can align the hatching with a segment. So now the hatching is set properly. And here, if I look at my original file, it's a blue hatching with a blue outline. So what I can do, I can select my surface, modify, color, blue, but the hatching color should also be blue. So here, both are blue. That's all good. I can move to the next one. Here in our drawing, we see we would like to have um, some more hatchings. So I'm not going to do them all. I think it's
Part
pretty
4.
straightforward. Um, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to add these um, surfaces. So here it's this surface is a little bit smaller. I can find the midpoint. So M, I click on the segment. And then what I could do, I could split this surface. I could cut it in two. So I can press C and you see D to slice and then X to cut horizontally. There we go. Now I have two surfaces instead of one. And now I can modify the hatching. I could also copy this surfaces 6x here, and I could select this one and press C to cut. So you see it's pretty much the same as in Cadwork 3D. Then I can edit the hatching. So I'd like a 45-degree angle hatching here and another one in the other direction. So really straightforward. And here I'd like to change it. So we see here it's red and at the top it's black or white because I have a white background. So here modify color red. It's changing not only the outline but the hatching as well. And here modify color white. There we go. And I can continue here. Maybe for you, I'd like to show you um, some hatchings that are specific to mass timber. So we have one here for glulam, and here this one is for CLT. So you see we have two for CLT, and actually if you middle click, we have a hatching with 3, 5, 7, 9 ply, and same thing here. So outside layer is running along the length. So let's use this one. I'm going to do a 3-ply. So it's simply dividing the my surface in 3 and setting the different hatching. So that's again pretty straightforward. Now the last thing I'd like to show you is the special text. So I showed you before that we could in 3D set the project data. So it's done. Now in the 2D, I can go to preferences, project data as well. And you see here it's empty. Instead of doing, I can load the project data and I can take the project data that I have from the Cadwork 3D file. So you can simply select the 3D file and click on open, and it will take the project data that you've already done, that you've already created in Cadwork 3D. Then we have some predefined like text macros, or what we call special text in Cadwork 2D. So here I'm just going to edit the title block, and here I'm going to add text. So we see here we've been adding just a regular text, but we have text aligned with 2 points, vertical up or down, annotations, etc. Here I'm going to add some special text, and we do have the project data available. And so I can pick individual uh, project data, or I could import all project data at once. So here I'm just going to show you and bring all the project data at once. I'm going to middle click here, and we see here we have project name, architects, etc. All what we've defined before. So that can be put into our title block. So, and then one last thing is the scale. So we want to make sure we have the proper scale in here. So I can also go to add text, special text, and here we have layer scale, and I can middle click to define and place it here. So this can be deleted, and I can now move this text, so 5, and then you see at the bottom you can make a 90-degree rotation by pressing O, and then I can place the text in here. There we go. Last step in this for this exercise would be to print. So let's print this page. So I'm happy with what I have. I'd like to print it. So eventually, before printing, I want to like shrink a little bit this axonometric view. So I think it's a little bit too big. So I can modify the size in X and Y by maybe 0.8. So I've just reduced the size here, and then I can move it and place it in the drawing, and I can now print it. So I can select the frame I would like to print. So that's the letter 8.5 by 11. I can select it, and I can go to print. Here I have the Cadwork PDF printer selected. So you have all the printers installed on your computer available. So PDF, Cadwork provides a PDF printer. You can simply click on print, and then you see my frame number 2 will be printed. So I just click on print. I can pick different frames that I'd like to print. There are different ways to print things. But here I'm just going to print one page, and here exercise 1, and save it. And as soon as it's printed, it opens and we see the result. So that's it for the today's exercises.